Welcome to our MYgration Films watch party. We're going to see a couple films tonight, both dealing with folks with some Asian heritage, which is appropriate here as we're still kind of celebrating the Lunar New Year. And I've got with me Dr. Alvin Wang. Welcome.
Happy Lunar New Year, everyone.
Yes. Well, these films are ones in which Fusion Fest puts together a filmmaker with somebody from Central Florida that they've never necessarily met before. On a Friday night, they get to know each other a bit, and in the next 5 days, they make a film about that person. And Alvin was one of the people that had a film made about him that we're going to see tonight. Anything in particular you want us to look for before we take a look at this film?
Well, I'll just mention, and I do say this in the film, this is about a family recipe learned from my mother. It's Chinese pork and beans. It's been a favorite, not only in my family, but I think for all of our guests who have joined us for dinner. And, you know, when I think the typical American hears pork and beans, it's a very, very different dish than the one you're about to see prepared.
Right. Great. Well, let's take a look at your film.
So for today, lunch, I would like to prepare for you Chinese pork and beans. Hi, my name is Alvin Wang. I'm a professor of psychology at the University of Central Florida, where I have been since 1986. My parents independently traveled from mainland China to the United States independently, so they did not know each other prior to meeting in New York. You can see that's my mom, and she's actually, in this photo, leaving China. She's in the port of Shanghai and starting a new chapter in her life, and she will never see these people again. This is my grandma and me when I was a baby. It looks like I'm practically a newborn. My grandma was really proud of me because I was the #1 son of the #1 son of the #1 son. So I could do no wrong. I was her favorite, and maybe that accounts for the somewhat protective expression that she has on my face as she's holding on to me. So this is a painting that has been handed down by my family. I'm very fortunate now to be in possession of this painting. It's a watercolor, but what I want to point out is that in many Chinese paintings, you'll see script as well as what we call chop marks. These will be in a reddish color. It's cinnabar, actually. That is my name there, Wang. Yafu. Wang is my last name. Yafu, translated, literally means man of Asia. My grandfather gave me that name. And that would be my grandfather's seal or his chop mark. So this will always stay in the family. It's very valuable to us. A number of my friends have asked me, do you recommend a Chinese restaurant in the Central Florida area? And I'm sorry to disappoint them, but I tell them no, I don't eat out when it comes to Chinese because basically I cook better than the Chinese restaurants you find here. And the other reason is that you're essentially eating Chinese American. The Chinese cooks and restaurateurs who have opened up Chinese restaurants basically have adjusted and adapted to American tastes. And so the food you typically get in the Chinese restaurant here is going to be an amalgamation of some Chinese ingredients with what Americans expect Chinese food to be. And that can be quite different. That is, actual authentic Chinese food can be quite different than what you find in a typical Chinese restaurant. And I know as soon as you hear pork and beans, you're thinking about that goopy red bean stuff with bacon that you buy at a grocery store, usually in a red and white can. But as you'll see in a moment, Chinese pork and beans is anywhere close to what you get in the American supermarket. That is not a dirty wok. These are all really good bits of the pork that have been prepared earlier. So the technique we're using is what is called double fried or double cooked. So this has already been fried. It's already cooked through and already started to brown a little bit. And that's where all of these little good bits of flavor come from, right? That's the remnants of the pork. These are fresh green beans that have been cut up into bite-sized pieces. So I'm basically adding that, adding the garlic and the fermented black beans. So we don't want to overcook these green beans. We want them to be al dente, because once I add the meat, I have to reheat the meat. The beans would undergo some further cooking. So I don't want to wait until these are fully cooked before I add the pork. As a final touch, I'm going to be adding some soy sauce. I'm adding some ground black pepper. So once you're finished, you turn off the heat. Never cook with sesame seed oil. In other words, it'll burn off too quickly. You're using sesame seed oil as a perfume. It fragrances the dish just before you serve it. I mean, the key that brings people together is the food. And once people settle down, they enjoy the meal, they feel comfortable, that's when you see a real exchange of information. That's when you see people really loosen up and talk about themselves and share their thoughts and feelings. And that is always easier to develop when people are sitting down around a meal. And oh, by the way, fortune cookies are not Chinese either. Actually, they were invented by a Japanese cookie maker in San Francisco.
Well, thank you, Alvin.
You're welcome.
Those pork and beans do look delicious. I wish we were sitting down over a meal eating them right now.
Thank you. I do too. Mm-hmm.
Do you cook them often?
When I cook Chinese at home, my wife always insisted that be included as one of the dishes. Yes.
All right. And I love that you're not afraid to say you cook better.
Well, she will admit it. I couldn't say it without her first acknowledging that, but she, I think, allows me to do the cooking.
So, your folks immigrated, but you were born in the United States?
I was born in New York, native New Yorker. Right. My parents both came from China toward the end of World War II, and as I stated in the video, they met in New York, and here I am.
Did you grow up in a community that had a lot of Chinese? Were you were in a Chinese kind of community like Chinatown?
No. So that's kind of interesting. My younger sister and I were raised in Long Island, New York. We were the only Asian kids, the only Asian family in our district. I mean, we were the only children of color in our K through 12. There weren't even any Latinas. So it was, we basically were very distinguished.
And did your folks work at making sure you retained your heritage?
So there were two aspects to this. On one hand, there was a lot of cultural heritage, and I would say a large part through food and holidays. On the other side, I was born in the 1950s. Keep in mind, during this time, there was the Red Scare in China. You had McCarthyism, the Korean War, and there was some degree of anti-Asian sentiment then. And for that reason, my parents never spoke Chinese in the household. So my sister and I never learned to speak Mandarin. I wish we had learned that language, but at that time, I think there were a number of first generation Chinese who felt that they wanted their children to blend in as quickly as possible and not have any sort of overt stigmatism, overt characteristics that might bring about some form of stigmatism.
So when you came to this Fusion Fest filming, you had never met your filmmaker before, right?
No, and I want to thank Phillip Espino. He was great. We spent a whole day together at our place. He was wonderful. He brought all of his equipment. He had two kinds of video cameras as well as a couple of still cameras, lighting, screens. And so he made this really easy. All I had to do was sit down and cook and talk. And that made it pleasurable for me.
Well, that's great. And his background is not at all Asian. I think he's got a Latin heritage.
That's correct. We got along fine, and actually, after I cooked the pork and beans, we sat down and had a great meal together.
Just as you explained, that's eating is a great way to commune with other human beings.
I can't think of an icebreaker that would be better than sitting down and enjoying a meal together. Sure.
Great. And have you had other films made of you?
Well, as I mentioned, I have been at UCF since 1986, so there have been plenty of opportunities in the professional setting for me to be videotaped, whether it's some sort of presentation or maybe it's a lecture in class. So I'm quite familiar with standing in front of a camera and a microphone.
Have you ever had your cooking filmed before?
No, and that was exciting. At first, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to pull it off. I thought about it, having watched a lot of cooking shows, so I got all of my ingredients prepped, everything in place, and I was ready to go, and it was a great deal of fun.
Whose idea was it to film cooking?
I think this was probably a joint creation on the part of myself as well as Lori Turchin, who of course is
She's our
a great
curator.
force behind MYgration Films. She's a filmmaker herself, and she basically talked about, well, what ideas I had as far as my culture background and how can I transmit that visually. And I started thinking about my cooking, and that became a natural.
Great. And we've put up your recipe there. Thank you for sharing it. If people want to take a screenshot and
Great.
And try it out, they can do that.
Good.
So great. And the story just came about as you and Phillip were getting to know each other?
Yeah. As I said, we got along great. It was he spent the whole day here. He not only mic'd me and videotaped me, but then he would go around the house and take shots of various types of artwork we have hanging. A lot of it is Asian artwork. A lot of it, of course, didn't get into the video, but it was just fun walking around the house, more or less giving him a tour and explaining what he was looking at in terms of the artwork.
Yeah, that's great. So you'd recommend the experience to others who?
I would. Absolutely. It's fun. I think it's informative and maybe even a little entertaining.
Good. And yes, thanks to Lori Turchin, our curator of our film program, who does a lot of work ahead of time to make sure you're ready and the filmmaker's ready for whatever they're going to get. And she doesn't know either who will be paired with whom until that Friday night.
Yeah, Lori, I can't say enough about Lori. She was great. She organized. She was always on top of whatever situation came up, and always responsive. If I needed to reach her by text or email, she was on the spot.
Great. And I'm sorry we can't have Phillip on tonight. He's working, so he's not available tonight.
He's probably filmmaking.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
So anything else you want to say to us about this experience, or your thoughts?
I would encourage anyone who might be contacted as a prospective candidate to really seriously consider this. It's fun. And here's another, I think, added benefit that I hadn't considered at the time. But for instance, my daughter became really interested in viewing the video and more or less regards this now as a family keepsake, as an heirloom.
You've got the painting on the wall and you've got the video on the computer.
That's right.
Great. Well, thanks for talking with us tonight.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it so much.
We're going to take a look at Masami's film.
was born in China as a second daughter during one-child policy. I was not supposed to have life. Well, my family moved to Japan when I was 6 years old. We were put in a special class first to learn Japanese to more like friendly environment, and then later we were put in the normal classes. Well, as a child, I felt like I wasn't a Chinese or Japanese, like, you know, the dilemma or struggle of not being 100% Japanese or something. But it is important to me now that I know my family histories and what they have been going through in their lives, and that really inspires me, and I feel there is a certain purpose in my life to be in this position. So it's really important to me to find who I am. Okay. So I finished my English program in Dallas, Arlington, Texas, and then moved to Miami. And that's where I started to pursue AA degree there. From there, I think I became obsessed with painting and drawing, pretty much all like art classes. But I just love to draw, love to paint. But nowadays I do everything, whatever I can find around me that I can express myself, like including my body. So I'm really into like sometimes performance art, video performance, installation, and collaboration with live music, live dancers. Wow, that's so like, what is this? Wow, I can understand my family is suffering. Oh my gosh, so moved. Like as soon as I started saying Japanese, it's more like, it's not just me, it's more like my family is talking to me. Mm-hmm. 今の私の人生で一番大切なのは自分らしく生きること。周りの人の意見や批判を恐れてはいけないのです。たとえかっこ悪くても自分らしい生き方であれば、そこには自分に対しての愛があり、そしてその愛が人に伝わると思う。だから自分らしく生きよう。I think identity is constantly changing every moment. But I feel that I have different cultural backgrounds. I feel like I'm not belonging to a specific one, but I'm everything. I have found home inside of my heart, and that I carry everywhere I go. So I don't have the feeling of displacement anymore. I feel like that if you can listen to your heart, you can be home anywhere you go.
Anna East with us as well. And Anna, you are actually in Hong Kong now, right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Masami, were your parents of Japanese heritage? Or tell me how this is that you were born in China.
So my grandmother was Japanese orphan who was left behind in China during the World War II. And there were a lot of Japanese families were there, just living. But after the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombing, they had to leave, or those soldiers coming after them, especially the Russian soldier backing up China to get rid of the Japanese people. So 7 out of 10 people in my grandma's family died in the process, and 3 people, including my grandmother and her little brother and her mother, just keep running and running until they were like just hopeless on the street. And there was a kind man. He was bicycle taxi driver. He took care of them and spent all his money taking care of them, putting them in hospital, bought them tickets back to Japan. But my grandmother was left behind by her own mother as an offer to marry this guy who helped them. And so that's how my mother was born in China. And then I was born in China as a second daughter. During the one-child policy, my mother tried to hide me, but my family suffered penalties, discrimination, and society. So we decided to move to Japan, where my grandmother lived, because my grandmother decided to go back to Japan after like 24 years of serving her marriage to that my grandpa. So previously she was already made it back to Japan. So we just had to follow her and start living with her and start life together in Japan.
Well, Anna, making this film, you had a very different subject than our last one, with Masami as an artist and different outfits, and I think maybe some found footage you had of some of her performance things. And the two of you just met on a Friday. You'd not met before, correct?
No, yeah.
And so how did it connect, and how did you figure out this story?
Gosh, well, I found it to be really a really cool experience. Yeah, like you said, Masami and I were total strangers. But I chose my favorite number of an envelope for my
What's the
subject.
number again?
11.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah. And I think when we started talking, I was really excited to meet Masami, one, because she is an artist and a performance artist, and I just respect that so highly, and I think that it's such an interesting perspective that she has and she has to share. And then also, so I personally, I've lived in Japan for 3 years, and then Shanghai for a little bit. And so I thought that was a really cool experience, that I ended up with somebody where I had been to where they're from, and could understand just a little bit about their story in terms of the place. And yeah, so I think we just kind of like, she had set up this incredible Japanese breakfast. So we kind of started there and just got bits and pieces, and we just started talking, and she started showing me her art and the stories that she wants to tell. And so, yeah, we just took it from there. And I'm just glad that she trusted me with telling her story.
And Masami, we saw there that you got emotionally moved in the process. So how was this, having Anna come into your life and want to capture it?
Yeah, talking about myself it's hard. I'm not used to it. I just keep going, go, and just create and analyze it later, but I don't have anybody ask me any questions. So it was a good experience for me.
Was that difficult though for you, to have her asking questions?
Yes, it's difficult to kind of organize my thoughts. It's hard to put in words. I don't know how I can explain and express truly in with words.
Well, you did a lot physically that Anna captured in the movie as well, I think. How did you feel about the end product?
The product is amazing. I think it's a miracle.
Yeah. So, what did Anna do to gain your trust?
Trust is really hard. I'm really I'm having that issue right now. I don't know who to trust.
Okay. Well, having a breakfast for her to start with, as our last film said, no better way to start to get to know each other, right? Over some food.
Yeah, I was actually so excited to have some foods that I had eaten often in Japan and then I couldn't find in the States easily. So I was so excited to eat with Masami. She even made some for me, and I was like, "Oh, you angel! Thank you so much."
Yes, food is really important. We make dumplings together, and especially in the important days, and all the aunts get together making dumplings, hundreds of them. And I remember just watching them try to learn something, but it's just never come out perfectly.
Masami, what brought you from Japan to Texas to go to school?
First, it was Clearwater, Tampa. Clearwater has been sister city with my Nagano hometown for over many, many years. And I had a connection there in Tampa first and stayed with my host family for a couple months. And she was an English teacher for Hispanic children. And I just go there every morning with her. I started to do portrait for the kids, and I just loved it so much, and I wanted to learn more. So I went back to Japan and get the student visa. Came back as a student, and first it was what was the name? St. Petersburg College. Started with that, and then went to Texas, Arlington, and then from there I went to Miami-Dade College and then UCF.
All right, so it was UCF that brought you here to Central Florida. And
it was yes. I think UCF was popular college to go to for Miami students.
And you've stayed here.
And I stayed and I have masters now, and it's the whole thing is just miracle, and it's I've been very lucky to have people supported me.
I noted in the film that you talked about changing. I also noted that you had a lot of butterflies, which obviously their life cycle goes through many changes. I'm thinking that's not a coincidence.
Butterfly, I never thought of using butterflies. Always thought that was cliche, but I guess for some reason, going back to the butterfly, going through transformation as a woman artist and Asian woman who integrated in the US. So there's so many layers to my identity, and it's just forming differently, shaping differently every day.
And Anna, you spent one day with Masami?
Yeah, I think we did that all in one day, didn't we? Yeah, just one day, and then the second day we used for editing.
And you were able to do everything in the 5 days between Friday and Wednesday?
Yeah. And I think that at that year it was we started Friday night.
That was a
Saturday.
52-hour one, yes.
Yeah. So by Sunday night we had it finished and had to send it in, which was a good challenge, I think, for me.
Yes, the first year it was from Friday night until Sunday night at midnight. We've allowed a couple more days so folks can do a little bit more with their films. But so that, and have you two kept in touch at all after that?
Let's see. I feel like we've sent messages back occasionally, but it would be great when I'm back in the States to maybe go see some of her art or connect somehow.
And you're not in a part of China that is where Masami was born?
No, not Hong Kong.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's great. Thank you both for being here. Thanks for doing this again. I mean, letting us see this again. And the films are shown, first of all, premiering at the Global Peace Film Festival at the end of September, beginning of October, and then shown at Fusion Fest. And then first Tuesday of each month, we do these watch parties and take a look at a few of the films that we have that are so great about letting us to get to know people like Masami, who we know a lot more about you than we might have if we had not had this film. So appreciate that. And Masami, has this film, any thoughts about it? Is it something you've shown to anybody else?
I haven't.
Okay.
I'm really like shy about opening up, kind of emotional, deep inside. I don't know why I don't trust people.
So when this was done, did you feel okay about what you had done for this movie?
Yes, this is a very special, very good baby. It's a good baby.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to be pushed a little bit outside of our comfort zone. Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, those of you who are watching. You've gotten to a little bit to know a little bit about a couple of our neighbors, Alvin and Masami. Thank you both for being Asian Americans here and adding that interesting spice to our community, our diverse community here in Central Florida.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you, Terry. Thank you and all of the folks behind Fusion Fest.
Great. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
This was great. Really enjoyed. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everybody.